Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Renegade Immortal episode number 144 based on novel. So let's start. For someone of Kaoido's status, to know of this was already strange, and Kaoido even said that almost every cultivator knew the identification method. As a result, Wang Lin was immediately able to confirm that all of this was a scheme by the blood ancestor. Combining how carefree Yao Shishua was and Kaoido's answer, I'm sure there is a way to tell the difference between real and fake blood soul pills. However, I'm afraid that aside from the blood ancestor and his daughter, there is not a third person that knows. Wang Lin's eyes shined with a light of wisdom. This pill is fake. If the real pill can let them live once more, then a fake pill will send them to their death. Yao Shishua, since you are so vicious, don't blame me for being ruthless. Wang Lin looked at the wax pill in his hand. He was going to crush it, but he suddenly had an idea and put it away inside his bag of holding. One of the main reasons Wang Lin was able to survive for such a long time and become so powerful was his cunning. Back when he was at the core formation stage, the 8th extreme demon lord, 1. Check chapter 161, once said that this child was ruthless, bold, decisive, and cold. He was also very brave, thoughtful, strong-willed, and as cunning as fox. These words described Wang Lin's true self perfectly. To be able to reach such an answer from one of Yao Shishua's expressions and Kaoido's casual words was something not even most of those cultivators who lived for thousands of years could do. Only those old monsters who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years who had seen through the human heart could see through it like Wang Lin. It was like how back on planet Suzaku Wang Lin was able to see through Liu Mai's thousand illusion ruthless domain from the two different personalities of two female disciples. Although the heavens didn't give Wang Lin excellent cultivation talent, his wisdom was honed by time to allow him to obtain cunning far beyond his years. This was all a cause and effect that created a balance in the heavens. Wang Lin waved his hand and the bag of holding Yao Shishua left behind flew into his grasp. He spread out his divine sense and found that the amount of jades was indeed enough for him to reach the late stage of soul transformation like Yao Shishua said. 3 days, Wang Lin took a deep breath, and without a word, he pressed his hand on the ground. There was a flash of black light as his entire body entered the ground and disappeared. Wang Lin was sitting in the lotus position underground with his eyes closed. He was surrounded by the celestial jades Yao Shishua gave him, and he was absorbing the celestial spiritual energy like crazy, causing the celestial jades to turn into dust. A large amount of celestial jades was required to reach the late stage of soul transformation. Wang Lin didn't rest at all as he concentrated on absorbing the celestial spiritual energy like crazy into his body. He didn't have the time to fuse it into his body and instead condensed it into something similar to the demon crystal. He had studied the demon crystal for a long time back at the soul refining tribe, so he knew its structure very well. If demonic spiritual energy could be condensed into a crystal, then so could celestial spiritual energy. Earlier, he wasn't willing to waste celestial jades to try, but now that he had enough, he began his attempt. Once a large amount of celestial spiritual energy had accumulated, a change began to occur. After condensing for a long time, a crystal much like the demon crystal formed, but this one gave off celestial spiritual energy as it slowly appeared inside Wang Lin. The amount of celestial spiritual energy in this celestial crystal was 1/10 of what was in the celestial jades Yao Shishua gave him. The absorption continued. 3 days later, it was another rise of the purple demon. Yao Shishua was standing on the ancient mountain thousands of kilometers from the army camp. Purple light shined on the ground, creating a very demonic atmosphere. Yao Shishua's gaze would occasionally look into the distance and show signs of anxiety. Time is almost here. Could he really have changed his mind? Yao Shishua frowned. Just at this moment, a ray of light suddenly flew toward her directly like a ray of lightning, and Yao Shishua's eyes lit up. The ray of light moved extremely fast. It arrived at the mountain and paused for a moment before landing on the peak to reveal Wang Lin. Wang Lin was wearing white like Yao Shishua, and his hair was flowing in the wind, giving him an elegant look. You sure came right on time. Now I need to open the formation so that no one else will notice the abnormality here. As Yao Shishua spoke, she slapped her bag of holding and took out several blood-colored statues. None of these statues were big, they were each only about 3 inches tall. All of these carvings were of ferocious beasts that Wang Lin didn't recognize. A blood aura slowly spread out from the statues. Yao Shishua's hand formed a seal and she muttered a chant. Then she bit the tip of her tongue to spit out blood and used it to draw a symbol in the air. She hit the symbol with her palm, causing it to immediately grow big and imprint itself on the ground. At the same time, the statues moved on their own and each took a spot in 7 different positions. Then there was a flash of blood-colored light and they fused into the ground. The statues fused with the ground and then a mysterious force surrounded the entire ancient mountain. Wang Lin clearly saw that the symbol was only a catalyst and that the real power was from the 7 statues. This force was invisible, and if Wang Lin wasn't within 100 feet of it, he wouldn't have noticed it. Wang Lin spread out his divine sense and was immediately surprised to find that he couldn't see himself with his own divine sense. This was the first time Wang Lin had encountered something like this. The divine sense was like a foreign object that he could control at will, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find himself on the mountain. This was like if a mortal were to look at a mirror only to see everything in it except for their own reflection. Yao Shishua coldly said, "There is no need to check. Unless someone has the cultivation level of a demon general, there is no way to detect it." Wang Lin withdrew his divine sense and admired this formation very much. He asked, "Was this formation created by your father, the blood ancestor?" "That's correct." As Yao Shishua spoke, she touched her bag of holding and a blood-colored compass appeared in her hand. She calculated the position, put it on the ground, turned toward Wang Lin, and said, "Remember our agreement. Once the rise of the purple demon reaches its peak, a ray of blood-colored light will come from the compass. It will only last 1 breath of time, so you must follow closely after me." Wang Lin silently nodded. Yao Shishua pondered and said, "When we return, I'll give you the remaining celestial jades and the blood token. In addition, I'll also give you the correct method to using the blood soul pill." Just as she spoke, the purple light from the moon reached its peak. It was like the heavenly dog swallowing the moon for mortals. The purple light instantly spread out, and the entire earth was covered in his purple light. The sky and earth were filled with purple. At the same time, the compass on the ground released a thick, blood-colored light. Compared to the purple light, the blood-colored light was like a sword breaking through the purple. Although the blood-colored light was small in comparison, it was very tenacious. "Let's go." Yao Shishua let out a shout as she quickly moved and stepped into the blood-colored light. Wang Lin's eyes became cold as he moved like lightning and quickly followed her. At the moment the two of them entered, the blood-colored light disappeared without a trace along with the compass. The purple light gradually disappeared until it was completely gone. The biannual rise of the purple demon passed by once more. Wang Lin had experienced transfer arrays too many times and had a very strong resistance to the discomfort. When he entered the blood-colored light, he immediately realized that this was a pinpoint transfer. That means that someone placed a transmission point at the location Yao Shishua was talking about. As long as one can access this transmission point, they can enter that place from anywhere. However, it's obvious that one has to be inside the demon spirit land for the transfer to be successful. After the short discomfort from the transfer array, Wang Lin saw the rapid-moving trail of blood under his feet. These blood trails formed a bloody formation. Yao Shishua recovered half a breath later than Wang Lin. When she recovered, the blood trails under their feet had already disappeared. The movement of this bloody formation is similar to the formation created by the statues. They were clearly made by the same person. The blood ancestor is indeed not ordinary to be able to create a transfer array here. However, if given enough time, I can place a transfer array here as well. Wang Lin quietly checked his surroundings. This place was like space, with no difference between the sky and earth. There were only pieces of bright light, and under this light, everything was clearly visible to the eyes. There was a rough, winding path about 10 feet wide that led off into the distance. This was the only path, and it was not fixed, but instead fluttered left and right in a regular pattern. Wang Lin was standing on a platform that was about 1,000 feet wide. The transfer array was secretly carved on this platform. Wang Lin could see that Yao Shishua has come here many times. She sat down in a lotus position on the platform and said to Wang Lin, "Meditate to comprehend your domain. Only by obtaining the qualification mark can one walk on the path of the revered beast." She didn't say more before she closed her eyes and began to cultivate. Wang Lin looked around and walked forward. He stopped before the winding and empty path and looked at it with a serious expression. With one look, Wang Lin's pupils shrank. This wasn't a small path, it was clearly the body of a dragon-like beast that was too large to estimate. Thinking of Yao Shishue's words, this beast was clearly the revered beast. There is no memory of this beast in the memories of ancient god Tu Sai. Unless Tu Sai didn't know of it, then it appeared after him. What place is this to have such a large beast? This place obviously wasn't created out of thin air and was created by someone. Who exactly was so powerful that they could use this beast's body as a path? Wang Lin gasped, then his eyes lit up and he immediately began to ponder. He looked at Yao Shishua and thought to himself, "I must think of a way to get all the information about this place from her." He pondered silently for a moment before sitting down in the lotus position. He calmed himself, and just as he was about to dive into his domain, a thought suddenly entered his mind. The rumor is that the entire demon spirit land was the cave of a celestial emperor. Could this place also have been created by the celestial emperor? Wang Lin pondered a bit and looked around. He no longer thought about this as he calmed himself and began to comprehend his domain. The life and death domain had already merged with his body before he entered the demon spirit land. Right now his heart was immersed in his domain. His left hand was death, his right hand was life, and between them was the river of eternity. Although he was immersed in his domain, Wang Lin's vigilance never dropped. He had a bit of his divine sense circling his body, so if Yao Shishua made any moves, he would be able to detect it right away. Wang Lin was very cunning, so he knew that if he could be this vigilant, Yao Shishua would naturally think the same way, meaning it was not a good time to act. While he was cultivating, the image of his life and death domain gradually appeared around him. As he continued to comprehend, he entered an ethereal state and everything around him appeared clearly in his mind. He could vaguely sense a mysterious power falling from the sky and gathering on the platform. This force quietly condensed around Yao Shishua and circled around her. Wang Lin's heart trembled as he immediately focused all his attention on the mysterious power. As the mysterious power circled Yao Shishua, it suddenly moved toward the spot between her eyebrows and condensed there. At this moment, a golden light came from between Yao Shishua's eyebrows. After 3 breaths of time, the golden light dissipated and she opened her eyes. There were golden symbols glowing in each of her pupils. Each of these symbols were composed of 3 strokes. Although they were complex, Wang Lin could somewhat understand them. Now that Yao Shishua's eyes contained the golden symbols, when Wang Lin looked at her, his heart trembled violently. It was like lightning had struck his mind and thunder roared in his heart. He had the same feeling he experienced back when he first met Tor Senator. At this moment, it was as if Yao Shishua was no longer a late-stage soul transformation cultivator and had turned into an extremely powerful immortal that he couldn't possibly fight against. This feeling was very powerful. It was like powerful waves crashing against Wang Lin's soul. Not even the All-Seer could make Wang Lin's heart tremble like this. Wang Lin's heart trembled violently, but because his Dao heart was firm, he immediately noticed that something was off. What gave off this majesty wasn't Yao Shishua but the golden symbols in her eyes. Wang Lin took a deep breath to suppress the trembling in his heart. He no longer paid any attention to her and instead focused on comprehending his domain. He clearly remembered that she didn't have the symbols before, so it must have a big connection with the mysterious power that had just appeared. Yao Shishua's eyes opened for a moment before she closed them once more and returned to silently cultivating. Wang Lin immersed himself inside the life and death of the reincarnation cycle. Scenes from the past flashed through his mind. Learning about life and death, learning what is life, learning what is death, he opened the scroll of life and death, and finally the domain entered his body. All of this flowed through Wang Lin's heart. After an unknown amount of time, that mysterious power appeared on the platform once more. Yao Shishue suddenly opened her eyes. The golden light from her eyes was dazzling. She looked into the void with a normal expression. The mysterious power quickly appeared and began to circle Wang Lin. At this moment, Wang Lin's mind had reached a mysterious state. It was like he was dreaming. He felt like he had entered a world of hallucinations, as figures flashed by him one by one. He couldn't clearly see anything, but it also seemed like he could clearly see everything. This contradicting feeling made him feel discomfort. There was a low murmur of female or male voices that continued to buzz in his ears as if they were trying to tell him something. But when he tried to listen carefully, he found nothing. This feeling lasted for a very long time, long enough for Wang Lin to forget the concept of time. The sound next to his ears gradually became louder and the figures before him slowly became clearer. Just as everything was about to become clear before his eyes, it all suddenly turned into an illusion and silently began to dissipate. At this moment, Wang Lin seized the opportunity right when everything was at this state of becoming clear and about to dissipate. His eyes lit up and the only life seal from the celestial slaughter art immediately condensed on his forehead. "My name is Qing Lin," a clear voice instantly appeared next to his ears, but this voice only lasted for a moment before vanishing. Wang Lin seized the right opportunity. If he had used the life seal too early, he would never have heard this voice. He was only able to hear this because he had used the life seal right at the moment. Instead of looking, he chose to listen because a voice could convey more real information while sight was often obstructed by one's own thoughts. At the moment all of this disappeared, Wang Lin opened his eyes as if he had awakened from a dream. There was now a violent golden light shining from his eyes. The golden light lasted for 6 breaths of time before dissipating. At this moment, golden symbols appeared in his eyes. These symbols were made up of 6 strokes and looked extremely complicated. Yao Shishue's expression was ugly. She didn't think Wang Lin would obtain a 6-stroke symbol during his comprehension. At the moment Wang Lin opened his eyes, he looked at Yao Shishue and immediately found that although she still had the symbols, the powerful majesty that he couldn't resist no longer existed. For some reason, a feeling of looking down upon her appeared in his heart. This gaze from Wang Lin made Yao Shishue extremely uncomfortable, so she subconsciously looked away. She coldly said, "With the golden symbols, you can now walk on the revered dragon path. Let's go." With that, she stepped onto the dragon path and quickly moved ahead. Even she hadn't realized that the golden symbols in her eyes had dimmed when she looked at Wang Lin. It was as if a firefly had met the moon. Although both were bright, when compared to each other, the firefly was naturally dimmer. Wang Lin placed his hand before his eyes. When his eyes looked at his palm, a clear symbol was projected on it. What exactly is this golden symbol? Wang Lin pondered as he walked up to the revered dragon path and slowly walked forward. It was an endless, starry abyss below the dragon path. Although it was uncertain whether you would live or die if you fell, just the thought of falling was enough to scare people. The dragon road slowly moved left and right. If a mortal was on the path, they would be scared to death, but for cultivators, this had no effect on them. The two of them moved one after the other at an extremely quick speed as they followed the path into the distance. This path seemed to have no end. The two of them hadn't rested for 3 days, but the road before them continued to extend. Yao Shishue's expression was normal. She came here many times already, so she knew that they had only traveled 1/3 of the way there. Several days later, another giant platform appeared before the revered dragon path. There was an object standing on the platform. This object was a statue about 30 feet high, and it stood at the center of the platform. This statue was that of a human, but he had extremely large ears and arms. Yao Shishue stopped walking on the dragon path, looked back at Wang Lin not far behind her, and said, "This place is the first seal. The two of us will each break a layer. I'll break the first layer and you will break the second one." Wang Lin's expression was normal as he calmly said, "Okay." Yao Shishue didn't waste any more words. She jumped into the air and charged onto the platform like lightning. At the moment her body landed on the platform, a golden light automatically released from her eyes. This golden light contained the golden symbols, and it landed on the platform along with her. The statue trembled and white gas came out from it. Then it suddenly opened its eyes, revealing a ruthless gaze. It raised its feet and took a step that caused the entire platform to tremble. A thick killing intent immediately spread out with that step. Yao Shishue floated in the air. She has dealt with this statue several times now, so she was very familiar with it. She touched her bag of holding with her right hand and took out a piece of jade. This jade was blood red in color and was clearly different from a normal jade. Seal. With one word, Yao Shishue threw out the jade. The jade shattered in the air and turned into a dense, blood-colored light that covered the statue in a flash. The blood-colored light surrounded the statue, making it look like a blood-colored cloth had been thrown over it and imprisoned it. No matter how hard it struggled, it couldn't break through the blood seal. Yao Shishue's beautiful figure slowly landed on the ground. She turned around to look at Wang Lin before turning toward the other end of the platform. There was another revered dragon path at the other side of the platform. Wang Lin's pupils shrank. The cultivation of this statue wasn't any weaker than an early-stage soul transformation cultivator. Although it lacked intelligence, the power of that step was very strong. If one allowed it to use a spell or move freely, it definitely wouldn't be easy to deal with. However, a few moments ago, it was so easily sealed by Yao Shishue. This made Wang Lin have a completely new opinion about her. Wang Lin secretly thought that blood jade must have been refined by her father to have such power. He didn't show any of his thoughts on his face as he jumped onto the platform. At the moment he walked past the statue covered by the blood-colored light, he turned toward it and seemed to see a flash of golden light disappear. Wang Lin's expression didn't reveal anything as he stepped onto the next dragon path. When he stepped onto the path, he turned around to casually look at the statue, and at the moment he turned around, the life seal on his forehead condensed on his eyes. His gaze pierced through the blood-colored light and saw the flashing symbol on the statue. This symbol only had one stroke, and it was very clear. After clearly seeing the symbol, Wang Lin turned his head around. By the time he turned around, the life seal had already disappeared and his expression was completely neutral. Yao Shishue had already moved far off into the distance, and Wang Lin casually followed behind her. His mind was still thinking of that symbol he saw on the statue. That symbol was similar to the three-stroke symbol in Yao Shishue's eyes and to the golden symbol in his eyes. As Wang Lin walked, he raised his hand and his gaze fell on his palm. The six-stroke symbol appeared on his hand once more. This symbol is interesting, it seems to be the foundation. Whether it is Yao Shishue's three-stroke symbol or my six-stroke symbol, both contain this symbol. His eyes lit up and he waved his hand to draw that symbol. His finger contained celestial spiritual energy, but there was no reaction from the celestial spiritual energy in his body after he drew it. Wang Lin pondered a bit before memorizing the symbol and then no longer thought about it. His eyes revealed a mysterious light as he looked into the distance at Yao Shishue. She has the blood soul pill, so if I were to sneak attack her, she would just be able to revive. It would be difficult to kill her. 7 days later, another platform appeared at the end of the revered dragon path. This platform was the same size as the previous one, and like the previous one, there was a statue at the center. Even the appearance of this statue was almost no different from the previous one. The only difference was that this statue had a half-closed third eye on its forehead. At the end of the path, Yao Shishue turned around to look at Wang Lin. Although she didn't speak, her intention was shown through her actions. Wang Lin wasn't one to drag his feet, and right now was not the time to turn on her, at least not until he learned everything about this place. He took one step and directly jumped over Yao Shishue, landing on the platform. The moment he landed on the platform, he closed his eyes. The life seal quickly appeared on his forehead and sealed his eyes shut. After doing all of this, he walked forward on the platform with the life seal sealing his eyes. This was an experiment for Wang Lin. He wanted to see if the golden symbol could pierce through the life seal. The golden symbol didn't penetrate it, but at the moment Wang Lin landed, the statue trembled. It opened its eyes and viciously gazed at Wang Lin before stepping toward him with a roar. The life seal immediately diffused from his eyes and covered his body. At the same time, Wang Lin took several steps back and circled around the statue like a coiling dragon. As the statue roared, it began chasing after Wang Lin. Wang Lin's expression remained normal as his hand moved in the air, creating a burst of green light, and a simple restriction appeared in his hand. As he moved, he threw the restriction backwards. The restriction immediately grew to be few dozen feet large and blocked the pursuing statue. The statue's body didn't stop at all and directly smashed into the restriction. The restriction shattered like a mirror and scattered in all directions. Wang Lin's eyes lit up and he revealed a look of interest. Although the restriction he had just used was simple, it was incorporeal. Unless it encountered another restriction, that shouldn't have happened. That statue's entire body is probably covered in restrictions. Trying to break it by brute force shouldn't be the right method. Wang Lin's hand moved and rays of restrictions flew out of his hand and quickly closed in on the statue. The statue let out a roar as it jumped forward and threw a punch. The countless restrictions sent toward it all shattered, and a powerful force traveled through space toward Wang Lin. Wang Lin touched his bag of holding and took out the restriction flag. He shook the flag and the force coming toward him immediately entered the restriction flag and disappeared. Wang Lin's restriction flag had already reached 999 sets in these hundreds of years of him adding restrictions to it. However, what was strange to him was that divine retribution never arrived. These 999 sets of restrictions were all attack restrictions and were very powerful when used. However, as Wang Lin's cultivation level continued to increase, the power of the restriction flag was starting to become somewhat inadequate. Wang Lin was also thinking of ways to increase the restriction flag's power and increase the amount of restrictions to 9,999 sets. However, too many pure attack restrictions were required to increase the restrictions on the flag by 10-fold. Even with Wang Lin's knowledge, he didn't know that many restrictions. At this moment, a large amount of restrictions was flashing through his eyes. These restrictions continued to group and divide in his mind. His body was still moving very quickly, so the statue couldn't approach. Every time the statue was about to close in, Wang Lin would wave the restriction flag, causing large amounts of restriction gas to fly out, forming walls of restrictions to stop the statue. After the statue was blocked several times, it let out an earth-shattering roar and decided to stop chasing. It decided to stay in one place and stomp the ground. The entire platform trembled, and at the same time, stone spikes shot out from the ground right around Wang Lin. Wang Lin was already prepared for the statue's possible spells. He formed a seal and quickly dodged the spike coming from below him. However, the spike was like a bamboo shoot and came in layers one after another. In almost an instant, the entire platform was covered in spikes, and aside from the center, everywhere else on the platform was covered in spikes. Wang Lin's body flew into the sky and he floated in the air. The restriction deduction went even faster and his eyes never left the statue. His eyes suddenly lit up, and at this moment, the shape of the statue changed greatly in his eyes. In his eyes, it wasn't a stone statue at all, but something composed entirely from restrictions. Countless restrictions stacked together to form this thing, and there was not a single place on it without a restriction. Just at the moment Wang Lin saw through the essence of the statue, all the spikes on the platform broke off at the roots from another stomp from the statue. They then flew into the air and shot at Wang Lin like a rain of spikes. With Wang Lin's cultivation, if he were to use magical treasures or one of the 3 killing spells to break the statue, it wouldn't have taken so much time. However, Wang Lin's goal wasn't to break through by force but completely understand it. In Wang Lin's eyes, those spikes that were flying towards him were also created by restrictions. As long as it was a restriction, he wasn't afraid of it at all. Wang Lin has been studying restrictions ever since he was at the core formation stage. Aside from those old monsters that have been alive for tens of thousands of years, normal people couldn't compare with Wang Lin at all in terms of his understanding of restrictions. His expression was neutral as he waved the restriction flag in his hand and restriction gas flew out. These restrictions moved in a mysterious pattern according to Wang Lin's command and swept through the incoming spikes. The countless spikes were immediately and mercilessly deconstructed and merged into the restriction flag. After the restriction flag absorbed those restrictions, it immediately increased in power. Wang Lin's eyes narrowed and immediately descended toward the platform. He pointed forward and the restrictions from the restriction flag charged out like a whirlwind and immediately trapped the statue inside. Before Wang Lin's body landed, he turned into a cloud of green smoke and moved along with the restrictions. He immediately started circling the statue as his hand quickly moved, creating new restrictions that fused into the whirlwind of restrictions. From a distance, the statue looked to be surrounded by countless restrictions. No matter how it struggled and roared, the restrictions continued circling it. The restrictions hammered at the statue and entered through any cracks on its body. Wang Lin suddenly stopped moving and shouted 4 times. Break! 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 These 4 shouts caused the countless restrictions around the statue to all immediately swarm it. At a speed visible to the naked eye, the statue continued to change like crazy and was constantly collapsing. This statue was originally created from restrictions, and as the restrictions were being destroyed, the statue's body shrank. Feeling a sense of danger, the statue let out a fierce roar and its third eye between its eyebrows immediately opened up, releasing a ray of golden light. With one flash, all of the restrictions Wang Lin had sent out were forced back and began to dissipate. Wang Lin's eyes revealed a mysterious light. At the moment the golden light appeared, he saw a golden symbol inside the statue's third eye. This symbol was created with 2 strokes. Seal. Wang Lin let out a roar and spat out some essence blood. Once the restrictions absorbed his blood, they immediately rushed forward and began to counter the golden light. After 2 breaths of time, the golden light in the statue's third eye dissipated, and at this moment, countless restrictions swarmed the statue. Its body trembled as the ruthless gaze disappeared from its eyes and was replaced with bleak grayness. Shortly after, its body collapsed, and as it collapsed, countless restrictions came out and rushed out in all directions. In an instant, black restriction gas covered the entire platform. Inside this black fog there was a flashing, golden symbol that was about to disappear into the void. At this moment, Wang Lin suddenly felt something in his heart, so he subconsciously raised his right index finger and drew 1 stroke. This stroke created the symbol that he saw sealed inside the first statue. After finishing the first stroke, Wang Lin didn't stop and immediately drew the second stroke. This created the golden symbol Wang Lin just saw inside the statue's third eye. The moment the symbol appeared, the symbol that flew out from the statue and was about to leave quickly turned around and flew toward Wang Lin. It moved faster than lightning and fused with the symbol Wang Lin just drew. Wang Lin's eyes revealed a mysterious light. His index finger didn't stop and once more drew another stroke. After he finished this stroke, it created the 3-stroke symbol that was in Yao Shishui's eyes. This video will end here.